Shri Swapan Dasgupta. Please.
May I take off my mask? Okay. So, if at the cost of over this din, I thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak on this rather important subject, which I think has concerned not only India but the whole world. I think I would be fair in saying that when we met at the very initial point of the pandemic, there were a lot of us who believed that this would be a short-lived experience. We thought that perhaps even if 2020 was ruined, we would see a better 2021. But I think it's now very clear that not only are we talking about the second wave, we are not only talking about the second wave, we are also anticipating a third wave. It may be pertinent if we were to go back to history, we'd find that the Spanish flu epidemic which took place at the end of World War I led to about 50 million deaths, and of which most of it was contributed by the second wave. Now I think so I think it's quite clear now that what we are facing is a long-drawn struggle. We are facing something akin to a prolonged war. And this prolonged war is something which is not only something which is not something which affects only India.
Please go back to your seats.
Which affects
Please go back to your seats, Mr. Vidyasagar Reddy. This is not the proper behavior. You are a seasoned and senior member. This is not proper behavior.
I think I may be right in saying
this is completely
if I was to
unparliamentary behavior.
How do we deal with such a pandemic? And I think the answers are not necessarily easy. It's not necessarily easy. If I may start by saying, sir, if I may quote a line, sir, it is rather difficult and distracting to talk over this. I think all the same I'll try. I think a lot of us may be aware, or at least those, my friend Mr. O'Brien there might be aware of the passage I might be reading, because the author of that passage is someone who the state government of West Bengal appointed in the Global Advisory Board to contain the pandemic. And I quote, "The goal of social policy in these times of change and anxiety is to help people absorb the shocks that affect them without allowing those shocks to affect their view of themselves." In other words, how do we cope with the crisis without destroying the very esteem of people who've been affected by the crisis? This is a quote from the Nobel Prize winning Abhijit Banerjee. I think when we, in terms of social policy, have to decide, it's basically we have to take a balance of risks. That is what it's all choice in this matter. Policy is always about. It's about how do we balance the various risks at play. There is, of course, one way of just saying to seal off yourself from the rest of the world. Some of you may remember the case of Sir Isaac Newton, who in the time of the Great Plague shut himself off in a village for 3 years and produced some of his best and most creative works. Alas, that is a luxury I think we can ill afford today. I think we have to decide how much pain we can endure and how much relief we can give to people. I think when we decide that lockdown is only a temporary strategy, we take into account the fact that economic life must continue. We take into account the fact that we must try and restore as much as is possible the livelihood of people. We decide how much of relief through the state we can give to people. And all these are very important. The amount of relief the state has given to the people is considerable. I think today the minister, when he replies, will be in a better position to give all the statistics before us. But a position where we have a situation where roughly 2/3 of the population of India is getting free rations up to a very large extent is a very, very major step. It is also a very major step when we can raise the Manrega rates. It's also a very major step when we can actually give 500 rupees every quarter or every month for a long time to those who are the most destitute of them. And all this is possible because we had an economy which was resilient. We had an agricultural sector which was resilient. A vulnerable India would not have been in a position to tackle any of these crises. And I think this is the most important thing to realize, that today we have got to a particular position partly because the Indian economy was resilient, is resilient. We have a surplus of food grains, and that is what has enabled us to tackle this crisis. And on top of that, we have a sufficient scientific manpower. We have an industrial base which is capable of adding to those of the sciences. But despite this, I would say that this pandemic has been a constant learning experience for us. And I would just like to point out 3 or 4 features of this pandemic which I think should really take it. I am not going into the fact that we have already vaccinated something like at least 32 crore people who've got their first dose, 8 crore of people plus who've got both the doses. These are facts. These are facts which cannot be denied. In terms of the sheer scale and the magnitude of the operation, I think this is phenomenal. But at the same time, we must realize that there are few things we must think from which we can learn and which we can tackle as far as this is concerned. The first is the importance of open-mindedness. I think a lot of us say that we go by scientific evidence. We go by the guidance of scientists. The problem really arises when there is no unanimity among the scientists themselves. I think some of us may remember at the fag end of the budget session of 2020, when certain people wore masks and came into the house. That was at the very initial stages of the pandemic. And I think
15 मिनट के लिए सदन स्थगित कर रहे हैं, 15 मिनट के लिए सदन स्थगित।
at that point objected to